play basketball in my yard, rural Washington State, and I would call play-by-play, and everybody thought it was weird. I can remember people were like, Colin like talks when you play one-on-one with him. He doesn't play like that. I can remember hearing it, and people were like, it's weird.
We're going to talk a little bit about, Colin, how you got into the business, what made you want to get into the business. So bring us back to when you first decided you wanted to work in sports media and broadcasting.
I think I was 7 or 8 years old, and I just kind of knew it. I set up a little sports anchor desk in my room as a kid, and I'd watch the King 5 News in Seattle. You didn't have cable back then. And I remember I would play basketball. I can remember this. Kareem was big, and I would play basketball in my yard, rural Washington State, and I would call play-by-play, and everybody thought it was weird. I can remember people were like, Colin like talks when you play one-on-one with him. He doesn't play like that. I can remember hearing it, and people were like, it's weird. I grew up in a rural community. My dad was a workaholic doctor. My mom was British, kind of reticent, and I was alone a lot. My sister was 5 years older. We get along great. I mean, we never got along better. We talk constantly, but she's out of high school, I'm into it. She's out of junior high, like I was annoying. And so I was by myself, rural Washington, and I can remember as a kid, 7, 8 years old, this is really gonna age me, doing lineups. The Dodgers lineup, Ron Say, Bill Russell, Steve Garvey, all these little kids, and then the Cincinnati Reds in the mid-'70s, and I would play football by myself for hours calling play-by-play. And so by the time I got to college, and I really remember this, so I got to college, I'd already done I was like Vin Scully at 9 years old. I'd done 1 million games. And I got to college, to the radio TV department, and there was a guy named Irv Kuber, and he was like, we're having beers as freshmen in college, and he was in the radio TV department, and he goes, dude, you are way ahead of everybody here. He goes, where did you broadcast? And I'm like, in my head since I was 8. He goes like, I thought I wanted to be a sportscaster. He's like, you are a sportscaster and you're like 18 years old. So I just I think it was just innate. I was a talker. I quarterbacked my team, and they gave me the job because I could memorize a playbook and talk. I think I have, not autism, but they didn't call it Asperger's when I was a kid. You were just odd. I think I'm on the spectrum a little bit. Larry King is a friend, and I remember telling Larry, Larry's like, sometimes I watch you when we're in breaks doing something. He's like, you talk to yourself, and I'm like, all day. He's like, no, you've been dropped on your head as a child. As nobody else is. And I'm like, I jog to this day, and I just do rants in my head, and I talk about what I'm going to talk about. My wife, my kids at first didn't understand it. When I first met Ann, I said, listen, here's the deal. You're going to be in the closet. I'm going to be brushing my teeth, and you're going to hear me talk, and you're going to say, who are you talking to? And I'll say, America. So my wife now doesn't ask the question, but when literally I would date people, and I would say, listen, you're going to catch me talking to myself. It's just, I'm ruminating, I'm creating stuff in my head, because as you know, when you're a talk show host, you can't shut it off. Like I'm constantly, I watch stuff, and tonight I'll take 1 or 2 things I've seen and I'll use those on my show tomorrow. I have to fill so much space. So anyway, easy question, long answer. I think I've just been talking to myself since I was 8. I've been hosting a show. I just didn't get paid until I was 21. But at 8, I was hosting a show.
So after college, or actually you didn't finish college. So what was your first job?
Well, I was
7
credit shy. I'm still 7 credit shy. And
you're an honorary graduate.
I'm very close. So I was in college, and I was doing a lot of play-by-play, and I had 130 tapes. I mean, I knew I could get a job. So I called the Seattle Mariners play-by-play announcer, Rick Riz. They had a guy named Dave Niehaus, who years ago did the Angels, legendary guy, passed away. He was legendary. He's let me sit in the booth one time, and then Rick Riz, and Rick was young. He was like 30 doing the Mariners. So to me, he was like my idol, Rick Riz, 30 years old in a booth. And he said, go to the winter meetings in San Diego. Peter Ueberroth, remember him, was the commissioner. And so I went to San Diego. I had no money. I drove myself down, and I remember my business card. It was like an old Henny Youngman joke. I said, said, take my car, ... please. And I just interviewed, and there were 400 of us, and there were like 4 jobs. And KUFO in Midland, Texas offered me a job, and the Las Vegas Stars offered me one, and they were the Padres AAA affiliate. And Don Logan hired me. And 20 years later, I called Don out of the blue. I just was in the mood to thank people who helped me in my life. And I said, yeah, I never asked you this. This is really self-serving. Why me? Well, what? And he goes, let me tell you something. He goes, there were 400 guys, you guys were all petrified, and then there were you. And you wouldn't stop talking. And he goes, the owner of our team is like, that kid is so full of shit. But I'm gonna tell you something, I can mold that kid. I can throw him in a car dealer and he'll sell ads. He goes, hire that kid. And again, he just said, you just were moldable and you had a lot of energy, and I could kind of, we just didn't know what you were talking about half the time, but we thought, we'll put him on our sales division. They gave me 1 inning of play-by-play. So I was literally 19 years old doing AAA baseball, and I remember we had media guides in Las Vegas Stars in the department. Joe Buck was doing Louisville, Tom Brenneman, and I knew both their dads were legends, right? So Tom Brenneman was doing AAA, Joe Buck, and me. We were the only like 21-year-old guys doing it, and I'm like, I hate those guys. Those guys have dads who are famous. My dad's an optometrist. And you end up meeting them, and they're wonderful people. But I mean, I was a competitive kid. I got a huge break. But if I couldn't sell and talk, I would have ended up in a single A town. It would have taken me 15 years. But I started at AAA, and the owner of the local NBC affiliate loved baseball, and he heard me one night, and he said, you tell good stories. We can't stand our weekend sportscaster. We're going to fire him. Have you ever done television? I've never even been to a TV studio. I said, oh, God. I lost my tapes, but I am tremendous. So literally, I'm on the air at KVBC, sitting next to Laura Stevenson and David Riggleman, and I go, 3, 2, 1, go. And I'm like, I'm going to throw up. And I just got through it and got lost on the teleprompter, and about halfway through, I'm like, teleprompter doesn't work. These are highlights, I'm going to talk. And that's it. I mean, the story is so much luck. It's not linear. It's a lot of breaks. I made a ton of mistakes. I dropped an F-bomb on the air one time because I thought we were on tape, got suspended. And the governor of the state of Nevada, at the time, I think he's passed away, saw me in the Subway sandwich. Literally, and I'm just rambling, this is what I do. So this was second year on the job. You do the 11 o'clock news, and then you cut a morning news on tape. So the 11 o'clock news is over, everybody goes home, and I have to cut them. Fred Rogan does this now in KVBC. You cut a 2-minute morning tape. So I'm so stupid. So I go, everybody's gone home. 3, 2, 1. And I say something, and I go, oh, F word. Let me start it again. The morning girl pushes the tape in, and that goes on the air. So I get a call the next morning at 6:30. You're all over morning radio in Las Vegas. Should Colin Cowherd be fired for dropping an F-bomb? So that day, it was so big in Vegas, I called my dad. My dad says, be honest, don't blame anybody, look in the mirror. Oh, man. On you. So I go to Subway sandwiches. I'm literally trying to hide in town. I'm like, I'm the biggest jerk in the world. I run into this. He was a governor. He becomes superintendent of schools, and he literally walked up and he goes, I say that 12 times a day. Who cares? I was like, you dropped an F-bomb on television. You're going to be fine. So he called Jim Rogers, the owner of my station. He goes, you're not going to fire that kid, are you? He goes, you say that all the time. I've had meetings with you. He's like, no, we're not going to fire him, but we have to suspend him because the media is killing us.
You realize this is literally like the storyline on Anchorman, right?
Yes.
You've never seen Anchorman?
Yeah, I don't remember that part.
I mean, he doesn't say, he basically says that. Go, bleep yourself, San Diego, and then on Burgundy.
So, by the way, it's just, you end up in your life and you get all these good jobs, but, Vince Scully's first year, I think he broadcast on the roof because the radio went out. We've talked about this off the air. Our careers, we're in a really good spot now, but it's
We've had some experiences.
We've had bad bosses. It's if you don't get fired, it's like.
How did you end up at ESPN? Where were you before you went to ESPN?
I was in Portland, Oregon, and ESPN told me. I have no idea. ESPN was looking to replace Tony Kornheiser, who was very popular, and they did a dial test around America. And they saw a blip in Portland morning radio we were getting a huge number, and they said, who's on this? This is Portland. Nobody cares about sports? And they said, you know, it's me. And so they flew out, did not tell me, listened to me. The guy, John McConnell, was the president of ABC Radio, ABC, ESPN, and they got snowed in. Portland got a snowstorm. He never gets a snowstorm. So he got stuck. He had to listen to me for 4 days. He couldn't get out. So he sat there for 4 days listening to me, and he came back, and he told, he came back and he told Trod Keller, he said, I don't want to hear it. That's you. I don't want to hear about all these ESPN guys. He said, I heard him talk for 4 hours a day about nonsense. There's nothing to talk about in Portland, the Trailblazers, and he just talked for hours. I was like, get that kid. And so they hired me.
So we experienced this together, actually, Kobe Bryant's passing in Miami the first day of the Super Bowl. So it was really the day before our first show in Miami, which in general, a Super Bowl week is very high energy and very kind of chaotic. Talk a little bit about doing that show the day after Kobe's passing and what he means to sports and his legacy.
Yeah, that was the toughest show I've ever done. I had to do my opening rant's 10 minutes. So I was in Atlanta, and I got off a plane, and a kid I know in Utah who picks me, I go to Utah a lot, and we have this little young college kid. I think we're putting him through college. Every time we go, Uber him, and we pick him up, and he's a huge sports fan, and so he texts me, and he goes, is the Kobe news true? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, huh? You know, died. So, and I was just like sick. I was like, oh God. And so I went to the back of an Atlanta airport restaurant, and I got really emotional, and I thought, oh, this is gonna be brutal tomorrow. So then I went to the hotel, and we were just it was a morgue. It was just awful, and I felt bad because I wasn't in LA, and I'm like, this is really bad in LA. I wish I was in the city. I wish I got a sense of the tenor. I mean, I knew it was awful, because I always kind of feel like I'm kind of a regular sport. Outside of the home run derby, which you like and I don't watch, mostly what you like, I like. I find that I'm kind of you. I mean, I don't get the Pro Bowl, people like it, I think it's unwatchable. I don't like the home run derby. Other than that, I pretty much watch what you like. When I was sick to my stomach, I was shaking. And I'm like, oh my God, can you imagine the Lakers season ticket holders? So I did something I don't do. So I memorized largely, because I'm outdoors. I don't use a teleprompter, but we do prep for the show, and then I kind of have a sense of what I'm going to talk about. But if you watch me closely on FS1, I'm doing the show, I look down occasional notes, I've been doing it long enough. But I wanted to memorize it, because I knew I was probably going to break down at the end. I was like, oh, I had a couple of lines there. I'm like, oh, Jesus, I can't get through this. So I was in my room in the morning, and I was just memorizing. So I just said, you just got to memorize 8 minutes. You got to talk fast, quick. Don't say the lines that are emotional till the end, because you're shocked. And it was rough. It was hard. Like I did stand up in college a little bit. I wasn't funny enough, obviously, but I like to entertain people. I like to just talk and make you laugh and make you think. It's the whole thing of the show. You know, I don't want to talk about death. In fact, I generally, when I went to ESPN, I had a rule. I broke a lot of rules. So I went to ESPN. It was very Northeast. It was very Red Sox. And, you know, my rule, I remember my first day, I said, no death. We don't talk death on the show. Nobody wants to hear about death. Go to the opening, and people are like, well, so-and-so died. And I'm like, yep, that's not a topic, that's a death. So I never talked about death. And I can remember famous people dying. I'm like, my audience is driving to work. They don't want to hear about death. Kobe's obviously transcends that by a mile. And over the course of my life, I've had a handful of where you just have to break your rules. But I want you to drive to work. I want to make you think. I want to make you laugh. I want to make you smile. I want to make you maybe cringe. I want you to experience this kaleidoscope of stuff. I don't want you to be sad. But I kind of felt like that day was like,
there was just no way around.
We're going to cry together today. Yeah. We're all going to cry.
Lakers or Clippers? Who's coming out of the West? What's your take? I'm sure this is a hot topic for some folks out there.
I like the Clippers a lot. I think the Clippers are really built to play LeBron. I think LeBron, I think you can only ask so much of LeBron. 17th year, the Clippers literally just acquired a 4th wing defender. That's really the way I just keep throwing Patrick Beverly and Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and Marcus Morris, and they all play 12 minutes. LeBron's not going to get a break. And I think over the course of the series, it's going to be very hard. I think, listen, LeBron there's nothing like him in the history of the world, including Mike. Michael was a better scorer. LeBron is fascinating. We've never had a body like that. 17 years, hurt once. I mean, he is still the best player in the league. That just doesn't make any sense. I mean, you watch Patrick Mahomes, he's better than Brady. You can see Tom declining at the end of years. If I said 9 minutes, Game 7 finals, LeBron Kawhi, I'd be like, no, I'll take LeBron.
Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you.